Because if your brain processed and really truly thought about everything you were seeing in the world, you would be unable to function. Because if you just look around the room, your brain naturally suppresses everything that you're seeing because you cannot process that much. Your brain will literally short circuit. And so we do the same thing on our websites and our marketing. We try to help people organize the information in a way that is relevant and interesting and helps the brain say, this is important information that I need to take in versus this is not important information that I can totally ignore.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Customer, Your Success. My guest today is Alyssa Nolte, a startup founder, a researcher, and in her own words, a recovering people pleaser who spent her career turning messy, unscalable expertise into clear, scalable products. She leads TruVue, a customer intelligence platform that helps revenue teams stay ahead of churn by understanding what customers are thinking before it shows up in usage data or, guess, NPS scores. She also hosts not one, but two podcasts, Taking Back Monday and The Growth Signal. She's an amazing person of many talents, but apparently struggles deeply with keeping houseplants alive like we do. Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is going to be a great conversation.
The first question is, how are we doing back here with the plants?
They're looking pretty good.
Okay.
I feel like a bit of an expert in killing plants, and yours are looking good. So
Okay.
as long as I'm not around, they'll probably be fine.
My wife's happy with that because I mentioned that beforehand. She said, hey, I'm doing pretty good so far this year, and you better not make fun of me on the show. So
I
we're
love
doing
it.
All right. So sometimes we get started, like get really into the quick kind of business end of it, but sometimes we need to do some background. And I think with you, I want to get into the background here because you have such an interesting, as you call it, the origin story. I love that because It makes us sound like superheroes, right? But if you could please go back to how your career started right out of college, I think that is great table setting for this episode.
Yeah, I always joke that if I'm ever invited to give a graduation speech or write a book or do some kind of keynote to college students, it's going to be something to the effect of why you should take an unpaid full-time job right out of college. And, you know, looking back, I cannot believe that I did that. But when I was getting ready to graduate, I had 2 job offers for normal, stable jobs with salaries and paid time off and benefits. And this third option for a pre-revenue startup that had never made $1 in its life couldn't afford to pay me. There were no benefits. And I was a 100% commission only, eat what I kill salesperson for that company. So naturally, I did what everyone would do, right? Say no to those full-time salaries and take the uncertain path right out of college. And it all worked out in the end. But looking back, I was incredibly brave or stupid. I'm not really sure.
I was going to say, was it confidence or just, you're young, you just did it. What the hell?
A little bit of confidence, a little bit of naivete, a little bit of maybe just different thinking and looking around the world and saying, I want to have a job that if I don't show up that day, then, the world doesn't move, the world doesn't spin. And I wanted to do work that actually made an impact and not just be one small person inside of one large organization.
Well, yeah, it's the routine, the mundane security versus the entrepreneur thing. So the entrepreneur thing was strong in you early on, and you rolled with it. So catch us up to the current, if you could. Obviously, there's a lot that's happened since then, but tell us a little bit about how your career progressed and where you're at now, and then we'll kind of get into the meat of what you do and how it could probably, how it can benefit the audience.
Yeah, so my degrees were in marketing and psychology. And so I loved the idea of understanding how people make decisions, particularly when they're trying to buy something, when they're making a purchase, right? Because we all love to think that we are logical decision makers when it comes to buying things, but we're not. We are emotional decision makers. We are influenced by psychology. And so that's kind of what I studied. And that's really the reason that this little startup pulled at me, is because that's what they were studying too. Mm-hmm. On a commercial level. And so I worked with that startup for 10 years, grew it to acquisition in 2020, worked with that company, worked with huge companies all over the world, and then discovered I had a real knack for seeing problems and the way that these problems are presenting and coming up with out-of-the-box clever solutions that are just 1 or 2 degrees off of how you should do it and in the direction of how you could do it. And so I've been building that kind of muscle my entire career of How do we look around the world and say there's the right way to do it, and there's the way we should do it, and there's the way that we could do it if only we had the courage?
So really what you're doing is putting the science and psychology of this into purchasing and retention, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
What
How do we help you go from, hey, I'm open to learning more about this product, to, hey, I'm ready to buy this product, to, hey, I'm ready to make that renewal decision?
so there's so many places to start, but I think why don't we start with I like the kind of what are people doing wrong, right? And then get into what we could do right. What do most companies get wrong about how people actually make purchasing decisions? Because like you said, I think I'm totally rational and logical about everything. And maybe I am to a fault, but that's just me.
People, I think the number one thing that companies get wrong of every size is thinking of themselves as their customer. There's so many times where I will go into a company and they are designing a product or a marketing experience or some kind of campaign, and they think it looks great. They think it looks good. They think it works because they have the understanding and the context, and they're creating a campaign that would work on them, instead of really taking a step back and remembering, hey, I am not my customer. And my customer is the one who gets to define what works and what is valuable. I don't get to design that. I don't get to say that. The number of times people are like, oh, yeah, we've created this really valuable ebook. You don't get to decide that. Your customer does.
Right. And that's brilliant because I think a lot of companies are so I don't know how to describe it. You described it better than I can, I think, but you're so internally focused. It sounds good to you.
Yeah.
And even when I'm training people in my previous roles, it's a lot of times people are talking to clients or customers as if they worked at the company for 20 years, right? As opposed to somebody who doesn't do your job and you're trying to explain something to them. And if you've, the last episode with Dave Seaton on journey mapping, the same thing. Journey maps fail most often because people come up with a map based on internal discussions and they put
Yep.
a map together and think they're done. That's the start, right? The map comes at the end. You need to go out to your customers and test your hypothesis. So I think it's the same premise you're getting at. Yes.
Absolutely. It's the importance of leaving that echo chamber and making sure that you're not just being influenced by the I'm sure other people call it this too, but the hippos in the room, the highest paid person's opinion.
Oh,
And
I
so
love
we
it.
have to make sure that we're not just letting our hippos drive our decision making, that we're actually stepping back and listening to our customers.
Yeah, I love that. I just talked about this week with some folks. I actually spoke in front of some wealth management CEOs, and I was talking to some senior level people, and my view as a client person and a customer of these wealth firms was viewed as incredibly valuable because guess what? People tell the hippos, as you just call them, what what people want they think they want them to hear, not
Yeah.
what they need to hear. And so that's what I was there for speaking. And I think that's exactly what you're getting at. So that's pretty interesting stuff. So let's get into some of the details. Do you want to talk about maybe some of the stages of the journey where the emotions matter more than logic? But you tell me, how do you kind of break this down in the way you kind of analyze it and then come up with an action plan?
Yeah, so the startup that I originally joined was an eye tracking research company. And what that was literally allowing us to see what your customers are seeing when they view your website, when they look at your product, and when they engage with your marketing materials. And what fascinated me about that experience was we process visual information in about a fifth of a second. So your brain has already processed something before your brain cognitively understands what it saw, right? So we're pulling in all of this information.
Hmm.
And so with eye tracking, we can actually see what people are looking at, where they're getting tripped up, if they're confused, what words they got stuck on versus what words they kind of just float over. But sometimes more importantly, what they're entirely ignoring. And so there's that initial unconscious phase where we collect all of this information, and it happens under the surface. And it has to happen under the surface because if your brain processed and really truly thought about everything you were seeing in the world, you would be unable to function. Because if you just look around the room, your brain naturally suppresses everything that you're seeing because you cannot process that much. Your brain will literally short circuit. And so we do the same thing on our websites and our marketing. We try to help people organize the information in a way that is relevant and interesting and helps the brain say, this is important information that I need to take in versus this is not important information that I can totally ignore. And so we want to make sure that things that are actually important, like our calls to action and our pricing models and our value propositions, are what's getting attention, and not the things that don't matter, like our contact us page, our letter from our president, our global navigation at the top, if that's not what we're trying to do. So it's all about directing attention to what matters for the purchase decision.
That's fascinating. So how do you actually do it? I mean, how are you getting I guess what my brain's trying to process this now without short circuiting. How do you get the data, the information, the sample size of people's eyeballs looking at something?
Yeah. So how it works is, if you were my client, you'd call me and you'd say, hey, we have 3 or 4 videos that we want to launch to do a product demo. And we want to figure out which one is the most impactful at a glance. And so you would tell me who your customer profile is, and we go out and we find people who match that profile. We invite them to come in and participate. So it's good old fashioned Mad Men style market research.
Wow.
And you'd be surprised at the number of people who are excited even to come be a part of the creation of new, and the creation and have influence and say on what their companies are presenting and pushing forward.
That's so yeah, because that's my brain just said you got to have people literally come in and do that, and so you've got to get interesting, and then obviously, so your technology is basically analyzing that and coming up with the results.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you, I mean, you just broke it down for us what you actually do with it, but how is it then implemented? How what's the kind of the final step in the process?
Yeah, we work really closely with the designers and the creators. So we are not creatives; we're researchers. You don't want us designing anything.
Right, that's what I'm getting at it. Yeah.
So we work with the creatives, who we act as kind of that unbiased third party, right? They've created something that they like. They might even love it. Our job is to come in and say, here's where it works, here's where it doesn't, and here's where you can make improvements to your current design. But basically, I get paid a lot of money to call people's baby ugly and then provide proof that I can back that up.
Okay, so you don't do the design at the end.
No,
Because I was gonna say,
because
okay.
we'd be too close to it, right? People are emotional creatures, and if you tell them, hey, your design sucks, that might hurt my feelings. So I need to be separate from it so I can be objective.
Wow, interesting. So let's get into some of maybe the results. Let's talk about now customer experience, customer success. I talk a lot about retention, right, as being the power and the ROI, green referenceable clients. So can we talk a little bit about retention maybe, and how this kind of all plays into that?
Yeah.
What from your experience drives that loyalty, like renewals, lasting loyalty? Because we talked about in the introduction, I say you want to get to them before the NPS scores tank, right? And I'm not one to sit here and say rely on the NPS scores. The churn is a lagging indicator because they've already churned. Well, that's great that you're looking at it to say why did we churn, but to me, it's the ounce of prevention is worth the pound of cure, right?
I think the thing that I've seen the most that works really well is reimagining the funnel, right? A lot of companies will have their funnel. It's like awareness and qualified lead, and we've given them a demo and we've sent them a contract and they've signed the contract and now it's closed won, and there ends the funnel. I think that we need to expand that funnel and go a lot deeper to say, we've got awareness, it's a qualified lead, we've done a demo, they've signed a contract, and end closed won actually much further down the process, in which we say, and we've earned and secured the renewal. If you expand out that journey to not look at from prospect to closed deal, but instead to look at prospect to closed deal to renewal, then all of a sudden your mindset and your strategy around how you treat your customers changes. Too many companies close the funnel at closed won and forget there's an entirely second funnel that they're often ignoring that has to do with that renewal.
Right. And that's what I think I've been preaching here on most of my episodes. So what are your words of wisdom for creating that stickiness, the experiences that customers, look for to stick with the company and keep that renewal process strong and in play, right?
Yeah, we really look at a couple of key areas, right? We want to understand the sentiment around your organization and how they talk about you. So, for example, if I was working with a company like Cisco, I might say to you, Gary, tell me 3 words to describe your experience with Cisco. And your words might be big industry leader and slow, right? That just tells me a lot about your experience with Cisco, simply in a quick question and a sentiment analysis. But we also look at 4 key areas of perception. Do they trust you? Do they like you? Do they think that you know what you're doing when it comes to their industry, their unique problems, or their challenges? And do you bring value to their company? If they cannot answer yes on all or most of those, you're going to have a really hard time retaining that customer. And that likability is one of those big factors. We used to do some research in politics, and people will vote for a candidate simply because they want to have a beer with them, like the George and Laura Bush thing, right? And so we have to figure out, how do we create parasocial relationships with our customers that is with our brand and our employees.
That's exactly what we're talking about at this conference this week, right? Because it's financial planning. Most of these people were wealth management planners. You certainly have to trust them because you're giving them, in some instances, access to your money, but they're telling you what you do to your money. But then that bond, that relationship you're building is key. It is a total personal business, and that's what I spoke about, because I have the customer kind of centric background. But it was interesting that there was obviously there was a diverse panel up there, right? Because I'm mass affluent, 50 plus years old. And then the young man next to me was probably 30, just had their first child. He was with his family's financial planner that his parents had had. So they had built that relationship since his parents were about his, not quite his age, but he's still with that planner. And that's unique. And even the keynote speaker said after it, he said, Jack, is he still here? That's unique. That's the exception now, no longer the rule. And it's that he loved, he could clearly, it was just a great relationship. He loved the guy. He were close bond with the family, and he trusted them. And
It's a two-way relationship too. I think that's what a lot of companies forget.
Right.
And like, we're talking about financial planning in a very one-on-one relationship. I will often talk about, like, my hairstylist. She might do a good job cutting my hair, and I might even like how much I pay for it. But if I don't generally like her, I'm not coming back, right?
Right.
And so I think that we also see that companies are either shouting at their customer, shouting into the void at their customer, and giving them all of these things without ever hearing them back. But they're also expecting customers to do all of this work and put on all of this effort to find value without facilitating that for their customers.
Yeah, exactly. And just, I think you've really hit on a few key points where that kind of internal set of blinders is so damaging to companies, because you really have to listen to what your customers are saying. And that's, again, exactly what we're talking about this week, just in the world of investment management, because a lot of these folks, they don't get to talk to their clients as often as they should, and that's why they had the panel to start the show off. But I do think that's where people, especially the big companies, I mean, I know you work in a little bit smaller startup, but the larger the company, I think the harder that is, because it's so big and there's so many leaders and there's so many people that the customer voice gets lost in the shuffle, and it's a lot of internal noise.
Not only internal noise, but intentional barriers. The number of people who I've talked to who say they're in a customer success or customer engagement role or some kind of retention role, but they're not allowed to talk to the customer because it's sales' relationship and they aren't allowed to talk to that customer. Like, that is hindering your capability to build multi-threaded relationships.
Yeah.
And it's probably put in place for a reason, right? Like, somebody over inundated the customer with a bunch of stuff. The customer got annoyed. But if you can set up a strategy in a way that creates relationships that aren't dependent on a single person, that aren't dependent on one salesperson remembering to call them that day, or having that relationship, that gut feel to put their finger on the pulse, then you will be able to be much more effective in building those relationships and keeping that customer.
Yeah, that's beyond baffling to me. Everybody should own that relationship, right? Everyone, the whole focus of what we do when we talk about here is everybody's in client experience, whether you like it or not, whether it's intentional or not. So to
Yep.
prevent somebody from building a relationship with the customer, and especially a positive one, is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, and I think it comes from not recognizing that customer relationship building is a team sport. Like you
Right.
might have a team captain, right? Whose job it is to kind of direct things. You have a quarterback, right? That might be your relationship manager, your account manager, whoever. But our quarterbacks are no good without the O-line,
Right.
right? And so we
That's right.
have to have systems in place to make sure that we are treating our customer relationship building and our delivery of value to those customers as a team sport and not a solo trek.
That's right. I use that analogy all the time myself. The quarterback. One of the things I always talk about is quarterback's not there to jump on fumbles, but it's a lot of times in a customer focus or a client focus role, you're jumping on a lot of fumbles.
Yeah.
And I used to always say, well, yeah, well, it's your job to jump on a fumble. When the ball's dropped, you got to jump on it. Well, yeah, but do you really want Tom Brady jumping on fumbles?
No, not for what he's insured for. I'm not doing I'm not doing that.
Not that I'm Tom Brady in salary or appearance, and I certainly don't have the flexibility that he does for all his years of training. But no, but the analogy comes through, I think,
Yeah.
and so I use that one all the time. So great stuff. So let's quickly wrap up the kind of main interview section of this with a question about what you're doing now. What are you currently experimenting with that has you super excited?
So I'm currently leading a company called TruVue. And what we are doing, I have a joke with my original startup partner that I started with over a decade ago that he wasn't allowed to retire until I could figure out how to upload his brain to the cloud. I am the sales side, he is more the researcher side, and together we've built a great company that has done work for these huge brands like Salesforce and Cisco and Chase and all those companies that you've heard of. And TruVue is really my attempt to upload his brain to the cloud. We are taking everything we've learned about how customers actually make decisions, how you collect that data and interpret it, and rolling it into a software. So if you don't have Salesforce level budget, you can afford Salesforce level insights. And so that's what I'm working on right now that is getting me up on my Monday morning.
Wow, that is such interesting stuff. You're always looking at change and something new, right? I mean, it's just, I feel like it doesn't stop with you, right?
It really doesn't. Someone asked me a couple of days ago, what motivates you? And I said, the thrill of the new. I love the opportunity to do something new, to build something, to create something. Nothing is worse for me than being on the hamster wheel of executing something we've already solved. And so once I learned that about myself, I started to put people around me who enjoy the process of executing the known while I venture into the unknown.
That is fascinating. So you are keeping things moving. And speaking of keeping things moving, let's move on to the segments.
All right. Love that segue.
Okay, we're going to move on to Does It Hold Water, my favorite segment of the show. This is where I ask my guest to be our expert witness for the day, channel her inner Mona Lisa Vito. And I'm going to read a quote, a thought leadership quote. And our guest is going to see if this holds water or not, if the argument is solid or maybe has a few holes in it. So, are you ready?
I'm ready. Bring it on.
I put a couple quotes together for you here, but basically, the defense today is talking about change in organizations, and the defense attorney says any change effort will be met with inertia and resistance. That's just how human nature works. People dislike change. There's too much of it. Change fatigue is real, and most change initiatives fail because of this resistance to change. Does the defense case hold water?
It does not hold water. It's so funny. I actually published an article on Tuesday, 2 days ago, about this very topic. People are not resistant to change. They are resistant to uncertainty, lack of clarity, and lack of understanding of the environment and the experiences that they are having that require this change. So saying people are resistant to change, that's a cop out. If you are a leader who is saying that, you aren't doing what it takes to actually move your team forward. You aren't leading with intention. You aren't communicating well. You are not going to build a team that is resilient and that is high performing. And no, it does not hold water.
Brilliant. I can't do any better than that. So I'm not even going to try to add to that. But perfect. I agree completely. It depends what the change is all I'm going to say. Change is good. No one's going to resist it. Change is not good. you're going to get resistance because people don't understand it or you didn't explain it well enough. So, or it's
Yeah.
not a good change.
Yeah.
Not all change is good. Some change is good, some change is not. And that's all there is to it. But that is absolutely perfect. And I'm going to leave that one right there.
I do have a little story if you want to just pivot for 1 second.
Yeah, please do.
So I have a 6-year-old daughter,
Mhm.
and she loves to help me cook. And we were actually cooking spaghetti a couple of days ago. And she's never made spaghetti with me before. So this was a brand new thing for her, a change in our process, if you will. And I got the water boiling. I picked her up and I said, okay, throw in the spaghetti. And you, Gary, understand what I mean by that. You understand that I mean put it in the pot.
Mhm.
She took me so literally. She literally threw the spaghetti. It was all over the floor. About 2 pieces of it got into the pot, and the rest of it was like on the burner and about to start a fire. And of course, I am laughing because, of course, I said throw in the spaghetti. And she did exactly what I asked her. She made that change to her process, to her experience, because I said throw it in. But she didn't have the context or the background or the understanding of what I actually meant. And how many times as leaders do we tell our team to throw in the spaghetti without saying what we actually mean, which is gently place the spaghetti in the boiling water? And how often do our team members feel like they failed because they didn't understand what we meant, rather than recognizing that we as leaders failed because we didn't drive the change with great communication and clarity of what we were trying to say?
You just reminded me of I'm a baseball coach, and it's the same thing with coaching kids. They take you literally.
Yeah.
So I was trained when you round first base after you got a single, you look out to the outfield and you pick up the ball, meaning visually see where the ball is. Maybe the guy missed it, maybe he missed the cutoff. And I was teaching 9-year-olds to round the base and I pick up the ball. Well, the kid ran out in the outfield and he was looking for a ball to pick.
Yes.
What ball to pick up? Right?
And of course, like, we can sit here and laugh about it because we have the background and the context to know that's not what we mean.
Right. And he's going like this, like, where's the ball? And I'm like, oh.
Yes. And it's like, how that's another reason why change fails, is because leaders tell us to pick up the ball and we say, but why would we do that? We don't know. Okay, I guess if you say so.
Right. That's funny stuff. So they take you literally, those kids.
They do.
Great story. Thank you. Okay, let's move over to chip shots. This is my short form questions. They're professional, but still a little bit more personal in nature. We're having fun with it. It works well with the book question. Everybody loves the book question. Got a great book list. What is one book that has significantly influenced your personal or professional life, and how did it impact you?
The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni is a book that really changed my perspective on leadership. I've always worked in small companies, so I knew every single person on the team. And when I started doing consulting for larger organizations, I got caught in a couple of sand traps, if you will, in which I accidentally stepped into someone's turf, or I stepped onto somebody's initiative and didn't realize it, right? Because it's a big organization. I didn't know everybody. And so the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team really helped me understand how, as a leader and as someone who was trying to be a productive member of the team, how I needed to look at people and understand what was going on in their lives, in their minds, and how we can make sure that we build teams that are truly high performing.
I love it. And I'm not going to take the golf analogy in this one. I had a golf analogy last time, and I don't want to talk too much golf here. But the book that I am going to go there, that Dave Seaton recommended, was a leadership book. It compares leadership styles to picking golf clubs out of your bag. Right.
Yeah.
So interesting. So another interesting analogy. So great one. Thank you for that. I'm dying to ask you this one. If you could spend a day shadowing a leader or professional in any industry, who would it be and what would you hope to learn?
When you sent this question over, I sat down and I was like, okay, who would I want to follow? And the list became so big that I realized, you know what? I actually want to go back to the outside. So there's a guy named Adam Grant. He's an industrial organizational psychologist, and his entire job is to go in and study these leaders of these incredible companies and figure out what makes them tick, what makes them great, and what makes their companies successful. So I'd want to hang out with Adam Grant so that I don't have to choose, that I can go around and look at JP Morgan Chase and Salesforce and all of these incredible companies who are building great things.
That makes total sense now that I've talked to you for, this is our second or third time, given what you just said, because I see him on LinkedIn and I'm like, I'm not really sure what he actually does.
Yeah.
So that makes total sense. That's a
He has
great one.
a podcast where each episode is his analysis and research of a different company. Everything from Amazon to what was the Daily Show with Trevor Noah. So it's really interesting to see how people work and live and function in high performing environments.
Great stuff. So let me move to this one for you, because you talked a little bit about your early career and how it went actually pretty well. You took a risk and it worked. But is there a particular experience or failure early in your career that taught you a valuable lesson?
So a lot of my lessons, I tend to move fast and break things. So a lot of my lessons are retrospective. But the lesson that I always come back to is something that I actually learned in a student group in college. So not even in my quote unquote professional career. It was a student group. I had applied to be on the executive board. I was chosen to be the executive director. And there were a lot of people who were on the executive board who actually had more experience than me. So even though I was the quote unquote leader of the group, there was a lot of people that I was expected to lead that had been here longer, knew more, and had just chosen not to pursue that particular opportunity, that particular role. And so, like the young leader I was at the time, I came in with the attitude of, I'm the leader, I'm in charge, my way or the highway. And you can guess about how well that went. It was a really miserable experience for everybody involved. And I had to learn the hard way that just because you're the leader, just because you're in charge, doesn't mean you have the mandate to lead. And so I had to basically spend many, many months fixing what was ultimately just a few weeks of bad leadership. But it took me months to repair those relationships, and some of them never even got repaired. And so ultimately, our cause suffered because I didn't have what it took to be humble and to recognize that just because I'm the boss doesn't mean I'm in charge.
That is wise counsel, especially for early career goers. Yeah, that's right. Sometimes folks get a little bit of authority and take it too far. They don't know how to lead. There's a difference, right? And manage business school 101, difference between management and leadership. Anybody can be a leader, doesn't mean you're a manager. Just because you're a manager doesn't mean you're a leader. So pick one, but
Yeah.
make sure you're leading and not just managing through authority, because the consequences can be dire.
Yeah, you got to earn that right to lead.
That's right. Great stuff. All right, one last one. I'm gonna go advice. Look, you do 2 podcasts. Like, really? I got my hands full doing one. So what is the best piece of podcasting advice you've ever received, and how has it shaped your approach?
Have a very clear reason why you are doing it that isn't rooted in vanity. So when I first got started on podcasting, I was obsessing over how many people were listening and how many people were liking my posts and all of that good stuff, instead of just obsessing over really great content and building relationships with the people who were coming on my show. So my advice is figure out the real reason that you're doing this and make sure it's not a vanity reason.
Brilliant. And do it well, right? And so if you have the message and the conversations and the guests, if you're doing solo episodes, that's right. Just put it out there, get going, and make sure it's all about the message and delivering some value, not counting your likes on Facebook or YouTube
Wherever you're
or wherever
posting your
you're
stuff.
at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alyssa Nolte, you have been a fabulous guest. You do a lot. So why don't you tell the folks where they can find you?
The best place to head is to my LinkedIn profile. I am on there every day. Shoot me a DM, connect with me on LinkedIn. That is the best place to find me and all of my various exploits and things that I'm working on.
Thank you so much for being a guest today. Hey, we'll be back with more real soon. I've ventured into some solo episodes, Alyssa. I not bad.
You're ahead of me. I haven't had the courage to do that yet. So congratulations.
Yeah, it's actually kind of fun. You get going and you kind of get to riff a little, but definitely going to keep the guests coming. You guys are the strength of the show for real. And while I like the solo episodes, this is why I do it, to get great people like you to get your words of wisdom out there to everybody. So thank you all. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for watching Your Customer, Your Success and listening in. Bye for now, and we will talk real soon. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found something insightful that will enhance your experiences and drive your success. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and share your thoughts to help us improve the show. Don't forget to head on over to marracxhub.com for more ways to connect with me and learn more about experience management. Until next time, I'm Gary Marra, working hard for your customer and your success.